The Upper Christians, St. Ignatius. Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. Okay. So then we're kind of focusing this year a little bit on dealing with the heresy of modernism in our times and how it's affecting us, but not going through the entirety of, Pascendi and all the very great details about modernism, but just some essential subjective points of how modernism has affected us and the way we think in the modern world. And one of them, of course, we mentioned yesterday, was the problem of agnosticism. And agnosticism is very important to understand. And in fact, Mr. Bell was just telling me just a second ago a good example of it. You said it was a nanny or something?
Yes, my wife was working.
Yeah, right. So that before Mr. and Mrs. Bell was working for a lady, being a nanny, and as an example of the agnosticism coming out in people who are not intentionally modernists. And he says, well, your daughter loves you. And she said, well, I don't know if my daughter loves me because she's too young to know what love is. And when she gets older, she'll have to decide whether she loves me or not. And that's something which is, remember, it's a deep part of our, so remember this problem. We're not talking about agnosticism, which is the heresy by which we say we cannot know that God is God and you cannot know God is God. But we also mentioned in the Pascendi class that it's agnosticism reloaded, agnosticism adjusted, subjectivism reloaded. Every single heresy adjusted. So agnosticism means I cannot know and you cannot know that there really is a God. And that there really is some proof that he is God, but it's not sufficient. And there is some proof that he's not God. It's also insufficient. Therefore, I can't prove to you that he is God, and you can't prove to me that he is not God. Now, agnosticism reloaded is a universal agnosticism. That is, I can't prove that you really are a man, because of how do you identify yourself, and I can't prove that you're not a man. And I can't prove that you are a girl, and I can't prove that you're not a girl. That's where we are today. It's a matter of self-identity. And so that it applies universally to everything. This is a universal agnosticism. And St. Ignatius, St. Pius X talked about it 100 years ago. Understand this agnosticism. It's not the normal heresy of agnosticism, which is limited to God and to just objective proofs about God. It's a universal agnosticism, so that everything we meet, we must question. And that's why I mentioned the example of my own episcopacy, that I come to you and tell you I'm a bishop. Well, you can't be sure, because I said that, and I'm biased. Obviously, I think I'm a bishop. Just like when you tell me you're married, I should not give you Holy Communion, because you're biased. You think you're married. I need to talk to someone who's your enemy, someone who doesn't have any connection to you, someone that doesn't know you, and who's not in any way, and is a disinterested party, and I'll ask him whether or not you're married. Because he'll be able to say, since he doesn't know you, he'll be able to say, since he's disinterested and he's not biased. Now, this is a hallmark of all modern thinking, that the one who's the witness is actually not the person to talk to, but he's better than talking to the actual individual himself, because the individual is biased. You can't trust him. The witness may be friends or enemies of the individual. Therefore, you can't trust him. And what is this leading to? One of the key principles of practical modernism. What's it after? Think of modernism as a sin and a crime. We're not considering it here simply as just a philosophical or theological set of beliefs. It's a sin and it's a crime. Every crime has a purpose. Whenever you are investigating a crime scene and you see that someone was murdered, you want to find out what's the motive. Did they kill the man for his money? Did they kill him because of revenge? What's the motive of the crime? So, what is the motive of modernism? It has a specific practical goal, and that is universal, unquestioning, infallible authority of the expert. So you, at the very top of modernism is the expert. That's the key to everything. The expert is the one who knows what's going on. He's the guy that matters. This is very important because what's right and what's wrong, what the expert says. What's true and what's false, what the expert teaches. An example of this in our modern, an example of practical modernism in our real world today is CPS, Child Protective Services. When a police officer walks into your house and there is a, what do you call it, the girl that, the counselor, the social worker. When the social worker is there, the social worker says to the police officer, you see children playing, you see children talking to their mommy, you see children hugging their mommy, you see children being good. You see a mommy who looks good, healthy, normal, a good mommy. If the social worker says, in my expert opinion, my pointer, I don't keep you do my tape, except can't live without it, right? Okay, so in my expert opinion, right? So in my, see, it's good for everything, right? In my expert opinion, right, this mother is not a good mother. And this is not a safe environment. You must arrest the mother and you must take the children away. The police are obliged by law to arrest the mother and take the children away. Why? Because of the expert opinion. That's modernism. Remember, we are living in modernism. One of the great lies of the last 30 years is that we are now in a postmodernist period. No, we are not. We are in a perfect, completed modernist period. We are not in a postmodernist period. The postmodernist period is going to be the period of Satan and the Antichrist ruling directly. That's actually the perfection of the modernist period. We begin with agnosticism. Who begins with agnosticism? You do. Not me, I'm the expert. But all of you begin with agnosticism. And don't worry, I used to be like you too, before I met you. I used to not know things also. And I began agnostic too once upon a time, but I went to school at Harvard. I studied theology. I got a degree. I got an SOB degree. And I got a degree, and I am an expert. And therefore, I know what the truth is. The goal of modernism, the practical goal, is all people to accept unquestioningly the authority of the expert in all things. And this, Satan has explained to me 20 years ago, as a principle of Satanism. I was speaking to a Satanist once, I don't remember his name, many years ago, more than about 20 years ago, maybe a little bit more, around 20 years ago. And he said, you're a Christian, you're a Catholic. You don't need obedience. Free obedience is just one of many virtues. So if there's $100 sitting on the table, you don't need a law that says, don't steal the $100 because you think stealing is wrong. You don't need a law that says, don't shoot the guy behind the table because you know that murder is wrong. The laws are only for people who go crazy and don't follow these other rules. But we are Satanists, he said. We don't have morality. We think it's fine to murder somebody. We think it's fine to steal and to rape and pillage and to do anything. Our only source of order is obedience. There is no other source. We have an authority, the expert. He tells us, go to church, we go to church. He tells us, chop your head off, we chop your head off. Then he gave me an example. Suppose that I'm a Mason and a Satanist, and you are the arch enemy of Satanism and the arch enemy of the devil and Masonry. I walk into a room, I got machine guns, I got a grenade, and there you are. And I can kill you. And there's no one to stop me, and there's no witnesses. I won't kill you. I said, why not? Why? Because we don't have morality. We only have rules. We only have obedience. I wasn't given an order to kill you. So if I were to kill you without an order, I'd just as soon kill my boss as kill you. If I were to kill you without an order, when I go back to my boss, he's going to kill me. Because if I'm ready to kill someone else without an order, I don't care if he's enemy or friend, then I might kill him. Therefore, I'm going to be slain. We won't do things without orders. Whereas you people of Christianity, you have a whole system of morality, and you have many other things besides obedience that make you do the things you do. So what does that mean, practically speaking? Modernism is the final heresy before Satanism. All morality is going to be killed by it, but yet there still must be order and structure in society. Where does it come from? The expert, the superior, the boss, the head honcho, and nowhere else. That's the goal. We've got to begin with agnosticism. Why do you begin with that? Because when you're born, you are told that Jesus made the stars, and it's true. You're told the stars are real. You're told the earth is real. You're told all the things around you are true, and you believe it, and they are. Now when I come and tell you a lie, you won't believe me because you happen to know the truth. So what I have to do? I have to come and tell you the things you know may or may not be true. I'm not saying they're not true. I just want you to look more profoundly and deeply into the things you believe. Like, you believe you love your mother, as an example here, but do you really love her? Really? I mean, all the little kids act like they love their mother. So you're not sure. I'm not saying you don't love your mother, but we're not sure. So then we're going to go ahead and give some proofs over time. And what's it always going to end up with? St. Pius X says, what does it always end with? Atheism. It will always begin with agnosticism, travel through religion, and end with atheism. And it will be that way with every single truth. What are we after? Getting people to understand you can't breathe, you can't act, you can't know, you can't love, you can't do anything without the permission of the expert. You can't. So that's what we're after. And as you can see, we're getting very close to that right now. You can't drive your car without a seatbelt. Can't drive your car without a car seat. Can't drive your car without a GPS system. Can't drive your car without riding on the correct day. You can't drive a car without the right emissions. Right? You can't drive a car unless there's more than one person in it. And you can't drive a car if you didn't pay your taxes. It'll never stop. Every aspect of life is going to be controlled by the expert. This is essential in preparation for the Antichrist, because in the time of the Antichrist, it says in sacred scripture, you will not be able to buy or sell without the permission of the Antichrist. Unless you worship the beast, and you will not receive the mark upon your forehead, and unless you have that mark, you can neither buy nor sell. It doesn't just mean buy or sell drugs. You can't buy bread. You can't buy milk. You can't buy a car. You can't sell anything, including on Facebook Marketplace. You can't sell or buy anything without permission. And the government is going to watch what you sell. I remember when I was a child in the 1970s, I remember watching all the old people talk. I was a little kid walking around listening to everybody talk. And of course, back at that time, there's only one subject: the end of the world, the Antichrist, the commies. All one subject, not three subjects, right? They said, you know, the time is going to come. I remember a little kid, about 6, 7 years old. The time is going to come in the 70s. I was born in 1970, so it was 1977, 78. The time will come when people are going to have no longer phones on the wall like we have now. They're going to have phones you can walk around with. I thought, makes no sense. How do you have a phone you walk around with? And not only that, it will become illegal to not have one of these phones. And there you'll be able to be located and communicated with no matter where you are, and it'll actually be illegal to not have a phone, and then you'll be able to be controlled through that phone. I remember looking at the phone, Mama, don't take my cord phone. Mama, don't take my cord phone away. I don't understand that. But in any case, nonetheless, it happens. Now we're on the way, we're on the path. Some people who get the mark of the beast, the devil knows, some of the people who get the mark, they will feel sorry for those who did not get the mark. And they'll buy food for them. And they'll buy milk for them. And they'll secretly help them. But in the time of the Antichrist, they won't be able to. Because if they do, they will also be executed. And it will become possible. Well, now the technology is in place. That's the technology. But if you only have the technology, it won't work. If this technology existed in 1233, and a soldier came to a man's house at night and said, you bought 2 loaves of bread? Yeah, what's your problem? I got a pitchfork and I'm sticking it through your belly, and you're going to have your kings will need another night next week. I don't care if you're a knight. My pitchfork is sharper than your stinking sword. And I'm sticking it through your belly, and I know how to put it between the armor. Get out of my house. And the knight would have to go somewhere else. So what do you have to do? You have to enslave the minds of the people. So the people are ready to listen to the expert. An example of this was discovered by Lego Corporation about 30 years ago, in the 1990s. They found out that we can't make Legos anymore and give them to kids because they don't know what to do with them. That's all modernism, entering the head of the children. They don't know what to do with them. We give them Legos, and there's round things, and Tinker toys, and Lincoln Logs, and you just put them together, and what was that? You look at it, what is that? It's a Martian. Okay, it's an interesting looking Martian. Yeah, kid, you see, Dad, it's a Martian. All right, I believe you, son. Right? But the fact is, but now kids they have no imagination anymore, and they can't just pick up a Lincoln Log, and they can't just pick up a Tinker toy and just make something. They need instructions. They have to make the Star Wars, landing craft. They got to make the things according to the movies. They cannot just assemble blocks. This is part of the formation of the modernist mind. We are creating minds of slaves, and minds that will be perfectly obedient to all superiors in every circumstance, and only when they are told to do whatever they're told to do. So that's the end game. How close are we to it? We're pretty close. Also, it's noticeable in the last 20 years that children, teenagers, I still have an emotional problem whenever driving to Bardstown. I drive into Bardstown, drive down 5th Street, and I feel guilty I haven't done it yet, but I will do it before I turn 90. There is an actual public school which here's the building, and it has a round roof. And this is a concrete, about 3 foot wide pad that goes up and over all the way to the ground. And it's got run up over the top of it and down the other side written all over it. And if you fall, it's concrete and you're going to splatter. They built it for a public school. Any kid in the 1950s, when the teacher ain't lurking, he's going up and over that darn thing. But nobody ever's done it. For 30 years, nobody has done it. Kids are supposed to be rebels. Kids are supposed to go find a way to get in trouble, find a way to break things. Because God did make us with independent minds. We're supposed to use them within parameters, but we're supposed to use them. But now no kid has run over that thing in the last 30 years, which is a really bad sign, right? Kids today also, they're not rebels. They just follow the world around them. Why is that? Because we are at the end of a modernist culture. You cannot do anything without permission. You can't do anything without direction, and you believe whatever you're told. In fact, another way to call modernism, because there's nothing new under the sun, nothing new under the sun, as what's his name, Solomon said. It's the temptation of the world taken to its perfection. There are three temptations: the world, the flesh, and the devil. What's the temptation of the world? I must do what other people think is cool. I must dress the way other people think I should dress. I must talk the way they think I should talk. I must do what they think I should do. I must think the way they think I should think. When you take that to perfection, everyone has the same thought, same number of holes in their jeans, same number of tattoos, same cuss words, same movies, songs, same everything. As one of my old parishioners used to say, remember, you're unique, just like everybody else. So the fact is, you're going to be exactly like everybody else. Now, that can't happen without a structure to make you like everybody else, and that is the role of the authority. Everybody has to lock their doors. Everybody has to stay in their house. Every church has to be closed. Every person must social distance. Why? Because some expert said you might get a cold. Now, because of this, you have to stop living and you have to obey the commands. Until what time? Until the expert says it's safe to live again. And by the way, the expert says that you can never live like you did before. There's going to be a new normal. All these things are just examples of 1907 Pascendi, the heresy of modernism, working itself out in the real world. So you begin with agnosticism. Now we got to go through a journey. And to explain that journey here, we'll explain part of it, which is we have the example is a process of transfiguration. It's always important, like I mentioned before, always important to use big words because it makes people think you're smart. Transfiguration, which creates disfiguration. Very familiar with this kind of language. If you're confused, it's because you're supposed to be. Now here is now the example of, this is, here we meet Christ. When you meet Christ, we actually meet him. This is the Jesus, the real Jesus that walked the world, which we'll call the Jesus of history. That's the real Jesus. But here we are at this side. We're looking back, and we can't see the real Jesus, but we see the Jesus, the modernists call him the Jesus of faith, so we'll just put that term in. Well, you can call this, remember, don't just think of our Lord, Jesus of faith, Abraham Lincoln of faith, George Washington of faith, right? What do you call it? John Denver of faith. Doesn't matter who it is, right? The Beatles of faith. All right, everyone, we see not the real person back there, we see the representation of the real person. We see an image of this person. This is an image that comes to us that we see. Very important, Galileo Galilei. Extremely important. Galileo was able to tell people, every day you see the sun rise in the east, over here. You see it set in the west. You see it move, and you feel yourself stable. That's what the image is. However, it's not the reality. You can't trust what you see. But don't worry, we can know what the reality is because I have a telescope. I've got a telescope. Now, with this telescope and my special training, I can look out, but that's because you're seeing an image. I look into a telescope and I can see clearly the sun is not moving because I see the sun of history, the real sun. Now, if you listen to me, you'll know what the reality is because I've got a telescope. Very important. I've got a telescope. The victory of what used to be called the Copernican Revolution, but now too many syllables, so they call it of mankind, and the bishop and the pope, who were the representatives of God, they were in charge of mankind. So that on the top of the circle was God, and on the bottom was man. And therefore, the representatives of God were the top, representatives of man were the bottom. But now we're in a world in which God is on the bottom, and man is on the top. There has been a rotation to get to this point. That's revolution. So, how do we get from God on top to man on top? God on top, man on bottom, to God, man on top, God on bottom. It took a journey. It began with, I've got a telescope. I am a scientist. Galileo said 500 years ago, 400 years ago, he said, the sacred Bible, the sacred scripture, is the first in authority in the things of God. It is the last in authority in the things of astronomy. So that when the Bible talks about spiritual things, it is to be listened to. But when the Bible talks about scientific things, it is the last in authority. It should not even be consulted. That's modernism. Now, we know that God is the first in authority in religious things, but he's also the first in authority in material things because he created them out of nothing. And he sustains them, and he is perfect truth. How do you get rid of that? I've got a telescope. I don't question religion. I am only going in on a balanced way to discuss that in the things of science, I know the answer. You stay in the realm of religion. And then what happens? Science expands. And religion shrinks until one day there is only science and religion is dead. That's the prediction of St. Pius X, right? In the 4 elements of modernism, right? And so and then how does it all happen? This is the engine of the process. Quickly, the 4 elements of modernism. On the inside, there is the subconscious. Outside the subconscious, there is the conscious. And this is inside of man. Then, outside of man, we have the phenomena as visible. And then we have the rest of the universe, which is simply called beyond the phenomena. So there is the inside of man, the subconscious, which is invisible to us, the conscious, which is visible to us, the phenomena, which is the visible outside world, and beyond the phenomena, which is invisible. God and religion belong in beyond the phenomena and in the subconscious. The real world is phenomena and the conscious. There can never be a transition from beyond the phenomena to phenomena, nor from subconscious to conscious. So what's considered as the visible? Religion considers the invisible and the moral conscious, the moral soul. Invisible beyond the phenomena, the moral soul, the subconscious. This is the realm of religion. But as we learn more and more and more, what happens? The subconscious shrinks. And beyond the phenomena, and purple, they represent the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and sky. The 4 material elements of the material universe. Now, all 4 of them are real. Now, these elements are replaced with beyond phenomena, which is beyond the real. That's the Impossible Burger. Okay, and the Beyond the Burger. That's modernism. Remember one time I was giving a class on it. It said it's impossible to beyond meat. And it makes sense to you because you're all a bunch of stinking modernists, right? It makes sense. You either are a burger or you're a veggie. But this is beyond the burger, which means it's not a burger and it's not a veggie, it's beyond. That's impossible. It's vegetable chemicals mixed with poop, beyond the burger. And then there's the burger. That came from a cow. The other one came from a factory, made out of veggies. The Beyond Burger is a veggie patty with chemical crap in it to make it taste like a burger if you're stupid enough to believe that. But it's not beyond the burger. But it makes sense to us. Everywhere in the culture today we see this. Beyond, beyond. And we think it makes sense. Phenomena beyond the phenomena. It all began with Galileo. Now, why is it that he was so effective? Galileo recognized the power of science is not science. The power of science is the telescope and the expert. I have a telescope and you don't. I am an expert and you aren't. So if I gave you the telescope, you wouldn't even know what you're looking at. It wouldn't help anything. But I know. That's another heresy, by the way. Take off the A, and that's the heresy of Gnosticism. There's nothing new under the sun. Gnosticism says I've got secret knowledge, and you don't have it. You don't have that secret knowledge. Now, the expert is a Gnostic. Everyone else is an agnostic. So the expert is going to tell you what, so that he's got the telescope, and because I've got the telescope, I've got knowledge you don't have. You have to obey me and listen to me. Now, it begins with, listen to me because I know the world better than you do. When I go to a mechanics class, and there's a chief mechanic sitting there in front teaching me about cars, I listen to him. You know why? Because I think he knows about cars. And when he tells me how to fix it, you know, take the battery and stick it in where the block goes, and then, you know, and take the pistons and put them on the wheel, and I do all that, and I get in the car and it doesn't work, it tells me maybe the guy didn't know his crap. But if he tells me things that do work, then I know that he does know his stuff. I don't believe him just because he's a master of mechanics. When he says he's a master of mechanics, I expect that he's a man that knows about cars. And that when I listen to him, it's because he knows about cars. And if I do what he says, my car will work also. That's not how the modernism works. You have to listen to me, not because I know about cars. You listen to me because I am the expert on cars. And if I tell you the cars don't need wheels, I'm an expert. For instance, they now say, how do you know that a boy is different from a girl? Are you a biology major? Did you study in a university about what a male is and what a female is? How do you know? You can't know anything anymore unless you appeal to the expert, the expert, the expert. Modernism is in every fiber of our society. Now, how does it work? These are the four elements. Remember, phenomena is growing, beyond the phenomena is shrinking, consciousness is growing, subconsciousness is shrinking. So, how we see the Jesus of faith, the Abraham of faith, the United States government of faith, we see everything of faith. We just have a vision of what is put forward to us by popular culture, by music, and by what people say. We know that we must be agnostic. There's something of Jesus, there's something of the real Jesus in this Jesus of faith, and there's something added to this Jesus of faith. Over time, there have been additions to the Jesus of faith, and the real Jesus, he is someone different. What do we have to do? We have to discover the process of disfiguration and transfiguration. By this process, what happened according to the modernists? The real Jesus of history was disfigured by the process of transfiguration, making a transfigured Christ who is a disfiguration of the real Christ. So there was a transfiguration process by which the Jesus of history underwent a change, disfiguring him. We arrived at a transfigured Christ, the one we see, the Jesus of faith, who is a disfiguration of the real Christ. This process is repeated over and over again. On the History Channel, you're going to get who was the real Abraham Lincoln. Learn about the real Abraham Lincoln. What was the real Civil War? Who was the real George Bush? What really happened? What was the real Pearl Harbor? You heard this. It's not true. You heard that. It's not true. And when you watch, no matter what it is, you're going to discover that part of what you heard was true and part of what you heard was false. That's the process of disfiguration, transfiguration, creating disfiguration, disfigured, creating transfigured. This is the process described by St. Pius X and Bascendi. You recognize that we are here in the future, in the present, looking into the past, and the real Jesus is not the Jesus that is presented before us. Now, then there are some principles. And St. Pius X describes these principles are dogmas. They are never proven by the modernists, but you must believe them as a matter of faith. One principle is that no man does anything extraordinary. Period. Remember an example of that? It was why Bill O'Reilly wrote a book on Wild Bill Hickok. And apparently Wild Bill Hickok, right, is his name. Now, in his first day of heroism, I think 5 guys or 6 guys came to kill him. He was in his house. He didn't want to die that day. They came in. He blew all 6 of them away. Killed one, just like in the movies. He shot one, went around the corner, shot the other one, went around the corner, shot the other one. He killed all 6 of them, and they became a hero. That's what happened. So Bill O'Reilly writes a book about it. It says, we know, obviously, one real man against 6 trained fighters, he couldn't kill them. So obviously, that didn't happen. Why? Because that's a principle. Extraordinary things can't happen. And St. Pius X points out, they never prove it. It's just a dogma. No man does anything extraordinary, period. Either extraordinary in motive or extraordinary in action, period. So you're going to discover that every man did something only ordinary men do. And if somebody is called a hero, all the hero stories are transfigurations and disfigurations of a transfigured and disfigured, transfigured individual created to fulfill the needs of a community. In other words, BS. Always got to use big language so you can be confused. But the fact is that this process is invented by people who need Jesus. Here's an example they give, the modernists. They say in the Mark, the Gospel of St. Mark, the people were persecuted and the people were suffering, and they needed a suffering Jesus to comfort them. So therefore, in the Gospel of St. Mark, we find that Jesus Christ dies, and it's over. That's it. However, in the community of St. John, in Ephesus or whatever, they were more hopeful. They had better food. They had a better environment. They were better treated by the local authorities. And they wanted a more hopeful Jesus. And so they invented the story of the resurrection. And in fact, there are many Jesuses. There's a Jesus of the community of John. They needed a resurrecting Jesus. There's a community of Mark. They needed a suffering Jesus. And then there's other communities where they wanted an authoritative Jesus, like in the community of Matthew maybe. And so all this came together to form Christianity, which we now call the Catholic Church. It came together to form this. There were many Jesuses and ideas about Jesus that came together to form what we call today the Roman Catholic Church and modern Christianity. Now, another movement was called modern Judaism. So, in any case, the real Jesus, of course, he didn't rise from the dead. And he was one of many, many salvation figures and miracle workers of that time who were all a bunch of charlatans. He was just a little better than the average one. And he had a lot of positive things to say. But over time, he was, through the process of transfiguration, he was disfigured to become a disfiguration, and the transfigured Jesus is the one that we see. That's modernism. Notice that it only goes in one direction. The Jesus Christ who rose from the dead, the Jesus Christ who is God, the Jesus Christ that proved he's God, the Jesus Christ who found the church is always going to become an ordinary man who just unluckily got crucified many years ago, and somehow a movement was built around his name. Same thing is true about George Washington and every other hero in the world. How does this happen? There are two principles. St. Thomas Aquinas says, St. Pius X says in Pascendi, there are two principles of modernism. Evolution. That's the key, evolution. And the second one is part of evolution. It's called vital immanence. Immanens, which means remaining within. The vital remaining within. Charles Darwin calls it survival of the fittest, the second one. And survival of the fittest is a combination of vital immanence with this principle that no man does anything extraordinary. And the second principle I forgot to write down, dogma. These are dogmas. They're not proven, there's facts. Every man acts selfishly. Every man acts for self-interest. Period. It is not possible to act for any other purpose. Good example is a theological treatise called The Princess Bride. Now, in The Princess Bride, Wesley was apparently mostly dead at the time. And they had to bring him in to Miracle Max to bring him back to life. And Miracle Max said to Wesley, he said, "Why do you want to live?" But he couldn't speak very well, so he said, "Whoa." And then, what's his name, the Spanish guy, what's his name? What was it? Inigo Montoya, be prepared to die. Okay, then Inigo Montoya says, he said true love. He said true love. Is there anything more valuable to live than that? He goes, no, he didn't say true love. No. He said, you bluff. He said, you bluffed. So you just want him to be brought back to life because he owes you money. That's principle number 2. The Princess Bride. It's in everything. Principle number 2. Every man acts only for self-interest. He can't be alive. Inigo Montoya cannot want his friend to live because of true love. But he can want his friend to live because of true bluff. Because he owes him stinking money and he wants the money. That makes sense. Now, why does that make sense? because of these two principles are in our blood. A little boy, for instance, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire. I want to own everything. I want to experience everything because all that matters is me. Look at the modern cartoons. Don't ever let yourself down. Stand for yourself. Make sure you are not allowing yourself to be disrespected. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. That's what you got to do for me. And the fact is that that's all there is. All that, song, videos, movies, educational channel, and daily life is modernism lived out in the real world. Everyone must act for their own self-interest. This used to be called the mortal sin, and the essence of the first kingdom mentioned by St. Augustine, which is, two loves built two cities. One, the city of the love of self, leading even to the despising of God. And this city is a city of hell. Now we're told the city of hell is how you get to heaven. As it says in sacred scripture, at the end of the world, these people will see white and they will say black. They will see black and they will say white. They will see good and they will say bad. They will see bad and they will say good. Everybody must act for their own self-interest. They're taught this crap. I remember in France, in Lourdes, we were traveling. I had an Australian. I was in Lourdes for the 2008. We had 25,000 of us SSPXers in Lourdes, 25,000 of us there. And I was there with the Asian delegation. We were impressive. 25,000 people, we had 70, but we made a bigger stink than all the rest of them. We had more banners. Father Couture was really good at that. We had Vietnam, Cambodia, India, you know, of course we had our white cassocks, everybody else got the stinking black cassocks, you know, and so they're like, wow, Asia's impressive, yeah. We got 70 people here, but we got 90 banners. We had more banners than everybody else. And then Father Couture had us all around so that there was 25,000 people in the big, huge church down in Lourdes. And we were over on the side so that everybody, they may not see the altar, but they're going to see us. You know, look, the SSPX is all over Asia. Yeah, 70 of us. We had to hire some idiots to go, we had to find some chinks in the streets to hold the banner. You know, so, but the fact is, we have here, we're there for there, and I was there, an Australian guy with us, and they said, look, the stupid frog bus driver, his windshield wiper stopped working. He pulled over on the side of the road on an interstate highway with 6 lanes going across, and it was sprinkling. I said, can you feel the rain? There's no rain. The windshield wipers are not working. I cannot legally drive the bus. And I said, look, I got 60 people in a bus, and I got to get them across 6 lanes of traffic into that building. No, you cannot do it. It's unsafe. I said, how safe is it for 60 people in wheelchairs to cross a street with people going 90 miles an hour? No. I will not do because the windshield wiper is not working. I said, it is not working. It's not working. Drive 3 feet across the road. No, I cannot do it. So then I set up our brothers from the Philippines and my Australian, firefighter. I said, go across the road into that restaurant, tell them we're bringing 70 people in there. So they went. They didn't come back because there was food there and they had dinner instead. So I had to get them all across with old ladies. I got all the 70 people across the street. A couple of them almost got run over and killed in the process. We arrive inside. And I said, what the heck are you guys doing? You got all my brothers and the Australian firefighter eating dinner. He says, you know, we're trained in firefighting, Father. I said, what are you trained? That you can't help others if you don't take care of yourself. So our first duty is to make sure that our troops are safe. And my troops were hungry and they were ill-fed. So we sat down and we had dinner in the interest of safety. And the guy wasn't joking. The fact is that that's the essence of the principle of Charles Darwin, which is the principle of modernism. We must take care of self first. And somehow, by taking care of yourself, you help the whole universe. That is demonic, but it's a live principle of our times. No man, everyone must act for self-interest. Now, if they don't act for self-interest, they're lying. Such as the man Jesus Christ, who's a real man, who actually died on the cross for our sins? No, that's impossible. Why? Because that's not self-interest. He rose people from the dead? That's not possible. Why? Oh, because that's extraordinary. Do you have to prove it's not possible? No. Do you have to prove that he acted in self-interest? No. These are dogmas. They are principles, and they cannot be questioned. So now, since we know these things are true, what do we have to do? We have to find out the real reason. Why did they build those big cathedrals in Europe in the 1100s? Because of relics and stipends. That's why they did it. If you had a relic, you could tell people, I got a relic of St. Mary Magdalene. That's worth at least $5 million. Can I have it? No. Fork over the money. Right? So the reason why priests built cathedrals is for stipends. And the reason why they established relics is so that people could worship the saint and pray to the saint in order that they might give more money to the priest. Now that makes sense. That's why they took a vow of celibacy. That's why they took a vow of chastity, a vow of poverty and obedience. That's why they lived a life of sacrifice, because they wanted more money. And all that appears to make sense. Once this is in a culture, it does two things. Number one, it kills the formation of saints. Because you teach your children, take care of yourself. Be ordinary, be normal, be balanced. Take care of your own interests. And it also kills saints. Because if you see someone who is extraordinary, or you see someone that does not act according to self-interest, you kill him. That's a very important thing to create in a modernist world. We must be ordinary, not extraordinary, self-interested, not interested in the great good. Come forward to the SSPX 2012, Bishop Fillet. I remember at that time, it was only 10, 11 years ago, I remember 2009. We want the excommunications of Archbishop Lefebvre to be lifted. I remember myself at the time, and a couple other priests. I said, no, I don't want his excommunications to be lifted. Absolutely not. Those excommunications were false, number one, therefore they cannot be lifted. And number two, those excommunications were his martyrdom. They were his ticket to heaven. Just like St. Andrew was nailed to a cross in the shape of the letter X, St. Andrew's cross. And after he preached for a day and a half, the people all wanted to convert. And the king said it was a mistake to crucify Andrew, and he sent the soldiers to pull out the nails and remove Andrew from the cross. The soldiers came, and they tried to pull out the nails. And Andrew said, nope, not happening. You put me on, said Andrew. You cannot take me off. You will not take this glory from me. And they could not remove him from the cross. And St. Andrew did die on St. Andrew's cross against the will of the one that crucified him. He would not remove from his cross. Similarly, Archbishop Lefebvre, Bishop of Castelmayor, who are now in heaven, do not want the excommunications lifted. They don't care about it to be lifted. No, we don't. We want the church to come back to God. We want souls to return to the true faith and true Mass. St. Athanasius died a long time before Archbishop Lefebvre, more than 1,000 years. He was excommunicated at least twice. Archbishop Lefebvre was only excommunicated once. And St. Athanasius' excommunications have never been lifted in the last 1,500, 600 years since he died. It's not in the list of things to do. And it didn't even cross Athanasius' mind, nor did it cross the Pope's mind when they brought the church back from Arianism to the Catholic faith. They could care less about Athanasius' excommunications. He is a saint. But in our world of modernism, it's important. In our world of modernism, we have to remove the stain. The worst thing that happened is that my name be stained. We forget about a beatitude. St. Thomas Aquinas says, he says, if you count the beatitudes, as St. Thomas Aquinas, there are only 7 beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek, blessed are they who mourn, comfort, hunger and thirst, and so on. But we list 8 beatitudes. In fact, there are only 7 beatitudes, and these beatitudes match the 7 virtues. The 8th beatitude is a meek, is a blessing from God. Blessed are the meek, blessed are the clean of heart, blessed are you who hunger and thirst after justice, blessed are the poor in spirit. That's you. What about the 8th beatitude? Blessed are you when men revile and persecute you for my name's sake. That beatitude is a gift given to the saints. Blessed are you when men revile you and persecute you for my name's sake, for then your reward is great in heaven. Our Lord Jesus Christ was reviled and persecuted. The saints are reviled and persecuted, and that is their glory. We don't want excommunications lifted. We want the church to come back to the true Mass, the church to come back to the true faith. But what happened? It became important to us that our excommunications be lifted. And then what happened at the same time? We're going to be nice to you, said the modernists in Rome, to the modernists in Menzingen, Switzerland. We're going to be nice to you. It's like the mafia. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You come to me at my daughter's wedding. I haven't seen you for years. That's a man of generosity. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So, we're going to be nice to you, SSPXers, and we're going to lift the excommunications of 1988. You got to be nice to us. And the way you're going to be nice to us is you're not going to be so angry and so violent and so negative about the Novus Ordo and about Vatican II. You don't have to accept Vatican II. No, that comes later. You just have to be not so polemic, not so negative. And we're going to show our goodwill by freeing up the Latin Mass for those people that want it. Think about that one for a moment. Free up the Latin Mass for those people that want it. Guess what principle that's based on? Principle number 2 of modernism. Some people like Latin Masses and they don't like new ones. Some people find the Latin Mass in their best self-interest. So therefore, we're going to give to those people the Latin Mass. When St. Francis Xavier went to India, he didn't ask the people, what do you feel you want? He said to the people, you are worshiping Satan in false gods. Your worship is devilish, and it must be destroyed. And I'm going to bring to you the true God and the true worship which you need. And here's how we celebrate Mass. You've never heard this language before in your life, and I'm a bit rusty in it. But it's called Latin. And you're going to get this Latin Mass because you need it for your soul, even though you're not from Europe. You're going to get this faith that you need for your soul, even though you're not from Jerusalem and from Rome. You need it because it's God's command, and because the duty and purpose of man is to give glory to God, not glory to self. That is why it is not a danger to modernists to let you believe the Latin Mass is okay. They told you it was evil yesterday. Now they tell you it's allowed today. Did you get a victory? No. Why was it evil yesterday? Because the experts said it was evil. Why is it allowed today? Because the expert said it's allowed. No change of principles, no change of dogmas. Just a change of praxis. And you think it's great because they said it's allowed to have the Latin Mass. No. When St. Pius V codified the Latin Mass in Quo Primum in 1570, he did not say, I, Pope St. Pius V, give people permission throughout the world to attend the Latin Mass. I allow priests to celebrate this Mass. He didn't say that at all. He said, this Mass, which predates my birth, this Mass is the Mass of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, which no pope has the right to remove or change, and which every priest has a right to celebrate and an obligation to celebrate. I'm just letting you know. I am not making a decree coming from my own authority, because if the Pope made a decree coming from his own authority, any other pope could change the decree. He made a decree based on God's authority, not the authority of the expert. Even though the greatest expert and the greatest authority on earth is called the Holy of God. The expert decides everything on his own. You must follow because he's the expert. And lastly, we'll say a prayer here. Why does that make sense? Because of evolution. What makes it all rational? Evolution does. Saint Pius X says, remember the two principles that make modernism work: evolution and vital eminence. That's the need part. Evolution. Now, evolution is not subjectivism. Truth changes, and you can believe whatever you want. No, it isn't. The world really changes, and the world really evolves. Yesterday, we were in a different state of evolution. Therefore, there was a different morality and a different dogma. Today, we are in a different state of evolution. Therefore, there's a different morality and a different dogma, and it applies to everyone. That is constantly changing because the world is constantly evolving. Therefore, I cannot find truth by reading the ancient experts, because they only knew what was true in their day when the world was less evolved. So in the Council of Trent in 1570, they said the truth. That was the right thing to say in 1570, because that was the development of the world at that time, or 1540s, 1550s, before 1570. But now we have a different rule. The truth is still objective, and the truth is still one, but the only way to know it is to appeal to the latest expert who has studied the latest developments of evolution. All this evolution is a pagan religion, like all other religions, in order to give authority to the priest of that religion, which we call the scientist. He must have supreme authority, and you must obey and follow him. Evolution, the principle. Vital eminence, the engine. You, the agnostic. The expert, the Gnostic. Everything is for the purpose of self-interest, and nothing is extraordinary. Whatever is extraordinary must be eradicated from society. Whatever is not self-interest is against the interest of the common good and must be eradicated. It must be eradicated. Such as in the last, and we'll say a prayer here, such as in Gulliver's Travels, 1999, the Ted Danson version. They asked the king of Lilliput. He said, the king of Lilliput, yesterday there was a little ender who sunk 20 ships of the big enders, killed many of them, and he was a great hero. What should we do? Have him executed. I said, why? Well, because instead of giving him a medal, they chopped his head off. That's modernism. And because he did something extraordinary, he must be eradicated from society. He acted outside of self-interest, he must be eradicated from society. And in any case, we'll say a prayer here. Take a little break, right? Again, it crosses that way. So, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen. Glory be to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Saint Vincent Ferrer, Saint Jude, Our Lady of Victory, Our Lady of Sorrows, Lady of Upper Christians, Saint Ignatius, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost, amen.